Welcome to Leadership Unlocked, where we uncover the pivotal stories that shape extraordinary leaders. I'm Dusty Holcomb, and on this show, we don't just talk about leadership, we decode it. In every episode, we sit down with change makers who've walked through the fire, challenged the status quo, and emerged with wisdom worth sharing. These aren't just lessons, they're lived experiences, real moments that reveal the mindset, the resilience, and the clarity behind creating lasting impact. Today, you're going to hear one of those stories. Most leaders don't burn out from working too hard. They burn out from chasing a version of success that was never really theirs. Dr. Lani Jones has the receipts and the resolve to call it out. A clinical psychologist turned executive advisor, she's helping bold leaders ditch the noise, own their own truth, and lead with purpose that actually feels like freedom. If you've ever felt like you're crushing it on paper, but crumbling on the inside, this conversation is your wake-up call. Let's get into it. This is Leadership Unlocked. I can't tell you how excited I am about this conversation. I recognize that I'm probably being psychoanalyzed for every word I say at this moment, but it is my esteemed privilege to have Dr. Lani Jones on. She's a clinical psychologist, a recovering learner, burnout, grower, like just so many things. And I am just tickled pink that you have invested time with me and our audience, and can't wait to learn more about your story and share some of your wisdom and hard-gained knowledge with our folks today. So thank you, Lani, for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited about this conversation too. It's going to be good.
It will be good, I promise. And if it's not, I don't know what we'll do about that, but we'll figure it out. Well, before we get into like the really cool stuff that you do, I want to learn about you. Like you're from Indiana. Did you know when you were a little girl trying to figure out what you wanted to be when you grew up, that you were going to run your own business? Was that always a dream of yours?
I grew up in an environment, so cornfields of Indiana, and had instilled at me the whole time very much like go to college, find the job with the pension, the benefits. It was all about safety and security. I really didn't have a lot of models for like risk taking or business owners, things like that. And so being a business owner as I went through all my schooling was something very firmly in the things I do not want in life column.
And yet here you are. Well, we're going to get to that, but let's talk a little bit about your formative journey. So you went to college. When did you decide and know that you wanted to be a clinical psychologist? And more importantly, why?
So I was definitely one who I never had the full thing planned out. Actually, you could probably, psychoanalyze this, get a little Freudian on it of when I was applying for college and scholarships. One of the scholarships I was applying for, I was told, hey, the scholarship committee wants you to have a clear path. They want you to know what you're doing. They don't want anyone wishy-washy. And so I had a friend a few years ahead of me who had declared she was going to be a child psychologist. And so I was entering as a psych major, kind of thought I was going to PT school, physical therapy, but I was like, oh, child psychologist, that sounds good. That sounds very secure, respectable. So that's what I went with. And that's what I told the scholarship committee I was going to be, and really didn't have that as a clear intention though. But then got into things and was like, oh, I don't want to be a PT. Then I went the OT route. Then I'm like, oh, I should go get a master's, because I also was very much, I don't want to spend a decade in schooling and training to get here. But then one ball just kept on rolling, and decisions every few years to go get another degree. And here we are.
I know this from our prior conversation, but exactly how long have you spent now in pursuit of knowledge and learning and degrees, et cetera?
Ooh, I am a current grad student, and this master's is 4 years, which is crazy for a master's degree, but I'm in a specific cohort. So I'm at about year 14 right now, and even just a decade of grad school alone. So
you were very clear that you didn't want to spend a decade, but you didn't cover the over. So like I have this, I'm always reminded when something like that happens of my favorite Tim Keller quote, which is, God answers with prayers that you would pray if you knew everything he knew. And sometimes I think he just loves to laugh at us and, go, oh, you don't want 10 years? How about 14? How about 16?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
That's amazing. Well, I just finished my annual reread of Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl's work. And it's one of my favorites for a host of reasons. So similar to you, when I went to undergrad, I actually had a counselor, because I was homeschooled, who said, yeah, not everybody's cut out for college. Maybe you should consider trade school. So I don't know what psychologically broke or clicked in my head, but I was very clear when I graduated, summa cum laude. I went back to him and said, yeah, thank you for the motivation. I appreciate the little kick in the pants to make sure that you knew that I was meant to be here. So you get on this path, you become a child psychologist. What did you learn? What was it that filled your cup from those experiences? And then what was that journey like? Because that's not what you do today. What changed? What was the inflection point?
Yeah, so I spent nearly then a decade, all the training, all the degrees, started my career in a children's hospital. Most people in those positions were lifers. And so I got the position, thinking, okay, I've just spent a decade. This is what I was working for. I'm going to start and end my career here, and then got burnout pretty quickly. Not on the work. Like, I loved the work I was doing. Neurodevelopmental disorders was one of my areas of expertise. And so things like autism and ADHD, and being in a hospital setting, we were working with some of the most complex children. And so I really felt like I was making a difference with these children and families, and helping them, the environment, the corporate healthcare, everything outside of my direct clinical work, of just doing things to check the boxes. Like, I was advised by one of my first bosses, hey, if you even sneeze, you need to put that on your CV, like your curriculum vitae. And so just doing things, I thought once I got out of grad school, I could, take a breath on the CV, but no, not at all. And so doing all these extras just to fill lines on a paper, serving on committees, the publishing, the research, just to, keep climbing a ladder. I just really wasn't into that side of it. I loved the clinical work. I really did. But all of the extras just, for what? And that was the part that I'm just like, ooh, how did I get here?
So interesting. I talk to leaders all the time about the importance of connecting to the deeper purpose. Like, it's not some fluffy woo-woo thing. It's like, when you do that as a leader, you can connect the dots to a purpose that's bigger than making money. It allows you to weather the storms. And I'm sure some of this has been framed by study of Frankl and others, but when you get that right, you can get through almost every storm. But when all the other stuff is going on around it that just degrades the real purpose of it, man, it can just change how you feel about the work you do. That wasn't the end of your journey. What happened? Like, where did you find yourself? What was the inflection point that caused you to go, I need to explore something different?
So I was actually on a very unexpected medical leave for a few months from the hospital, and some additional things came to light just on how systems were going to be run, expectations, and was just even more eye-opening of, ooh, I don't think this is the place for me. And so then about 6 to 9 months later, when I did make the decision to leave, it made the decision much easier. But then I was like, what do I do now? Because being a business owner was never in the plan. And so I spent a couple years working as like an independent contractor with some different clinics. I was teaching. So I was doing multiple work, but then it was like, okay, we need a clearer plan here though, more long-term. And so then that's when I said, okay, I guess I'm going to open my private practice and we're going to figure this thing out.
I'm blown away. And I love that. I mean, you were focused on helping kids and specific expertise in, neurodegenerative disorders. Like, people, and I don't think most people know how to put in words what they're really feeling, but you're taking on something that's even more challenging. And I can't imagine both the challenge that comes from that and the reward when you really do help someone. What was going on in your head as you thought about this change? Because I feel like, just knowing you a little bit, that the ability to serve and impact others was really a prime motivator, especially when you saw the crap that was going to have to be done that didn't add value. When you were thinking about making this change, did you have mentors or advisors or others that reached out that were helping you navigate this? Or how did you approach that? What was your process of connecting to what was most important to you and then navigating that transition?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say this was very much played out. I had actually been interviewing for a position out of state, was very excited about it, and then got on site, and some of the things I had been told in all those phone interviews just were aligning. And so that was like, okay, well, that box or door is now closed. And so I had met another professional, and he had asked if I wanted to share some space. And so we were sharing an office suite, but kind of had our separate practices within that. And so I had called him on my way back and said, okay, I'll do it. I'll take the leap. I really appreciated having someone to kind of bounce ideas off of, to just lay a lot of that foundational work of being a business owner. And so we had two very different goals, though. I was looking to grow, really establish a pediatric therapy practice. I thought that's where I was headed, bringing on other professionals, just because with the complexity of the children I was used to working with, like they needed OTs and speech therapists and the whole gamut. And so I thought that was going to be my new vision and build out, and that's where I was going. But obviously, for those who know me, that didn't work out too, and I shifted yet again. So
it reminds me, as you mentioned that, though, the importance of having someone to bounce ideas off of and to share the journey with, even if it's for a season and not the vision, doesn't turn into this long-term vision you were thinking about. When I work with leaders all the time, we talk about, this, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. Leadership is lonely. There's the leadership isolation is a real thing, but it's oftentimes, and I'd love your clinical perspective on this, I think it's oftentimes created in our own minds because we don't actually look for the relationships or the mentors or the advisors or seek the opportunity because we think we have to figure it out on our own, or we think that it is weakness to not have all the answers. Like there's some really strong and compelling reasons not to seek it within your own organization, because you can, see a lot of issues into the organization, especially for the senior most leaders. But leadership isolation doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be the end state. If you can find the right cohort or forum or group or whatever, the right mentors to surround yourself with. What are your thoughts on isolation within leadership and that feeling, and then the best ways to overcome that?
Yeah. So once I got going, I did hire a business mentor, and he was specific to testing psychologists who own private practices. So very specific niche. I think for a lot of the founders, business owners I work with, there is that still that perception or those layers of ingrained beliefs of I should figure this out on my own. I can do it on my own. It says something less about me if I don't do it about my own. So oftentimes we have to peel back that onion, because I am now in the position like, man, if you're an expert in your field and I need that expertise, I would much rather just hire you out and work through it, because I know we're going to go that much faster than me like trudging through mud, trying to figure it out on my own kind of thing. So that's my style of just, let me use your expertise and let's run fast. But I know for a lot of people, there's a lot of those fears, insecurities of saying, oh, do I need to hire this specific person? And so they do get isolated pretty quick too. And just being an entrepreneur in general is very isolating. And so if you don't naturally have those people, I think in your environment, you don't get it unless you're in it, so to speak. And so people around you can be supportive and be as helpful as possible, but just the pressure, especially if you're, providing for a family and you're taking big financial risks. And if you're the breadwinner and it's all on you, you've got to figure it out and it's got to work. That's just a whole different ballgame. And so I think, as you pointed out, one, we isolate ourselves sometimes, but then on the other hand, it is just isolating by nature too.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, leadership is lonely like that, and it doesn't have to be, but it is, and by its very nature. And I love what you're just talking about when you mention, like, if you haven't been in the entrepreneur's seat, then you really don't understand. And I didn't understand until I became an entrepreneur. And it's not good or it's bad. I'm not making a value statement about individuals. It's just different. And what I found, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, like, you can talk about balance. And I have a personal belief, and I really can't wait to get your opinions on this, that there is no such thing as work-life balance. There's balancing, there's tension management, there's making intentional choices based on your priorities, on how you want to navigate tension within a moment or within a season. But as an entrepreneur or as a person who is responsible for those things, it doesn't shut off at 5 p.m. on a Friday. Like, you just don't, my brain, I don't know, I can only speak for myself, and my brain may be a little wonky. My brain doesn't work that way. But what I also know is it's more fun than anything I've ever done because it's not work. And I don't know, it's just this weird dynamic. So what are your thoughts on work-life balance and it's all this in vogue chat about, we have to have these hard, fast rules, and how that applies within the real world, and then maybe even how it applies for the entrepreneur?
I'm glad it sounds like we're on the same page on this, because this is totally one of my soapboxes I can get up on.
Oh, good. Please, I can't wait. Please do.
Because I think work-life balance is just a total myth. And if that is what you're chasing, if that is what you're pursuing, because a lot of the noise currently all over social media, even the younger generation, now we're seeing the research coming out of how they're interviewing, what questions they're asking, things like that, all around balance. Like, this is a really bold statement, but I'll make it. If you are seeking, as an entrepreneur, and I'll make it specific to that area, if you're seeking work-life balance, you are probably not going to be living an exceptional life, because it just does not exist. And probably you're going to be hurting either your relationships, you're going to be hurting your business, because it's kind of the old adage of you can't have your cake and eat it too. And so with the owners I work with, we all talk about seasons, because with COVID, one of the hardest things about coping with COVID was there was no end in sight. And so it was just how long is this going to go on? How long is this going to go on? Versus if you're in startup mode, or even an accountant, tax season, I'm sure all their relationships around them, they do not expect them to be home at 5 o'clock every day for dinner in the midst of tax season. That's just not going to go well for anyone. Deadlines are going to get missed. You're going to have unhappy clients. And so most people can understand that metaphor, oh yeah, we would never expect accountants in the midst of tax season to have work-life balance. And so we really talk about seasons, because if you're in a season, then you can clearly communicate, with the relationships around you. You can set clear expectations, you can set boundaries. But if this is this is my life and I'm just in this state of chaos and there's no insight, then that's probably a problem where we need to intervene in that sense, because there's sometimes, as an entrepreneur, you just need to run hard. And so same with seasons of family. If you're in a caregiving mode, it could be for parents, for your children, the ages of your kids, that needs to be the priority, and you need to put the business in cruise mode. And so once again, there's no right or wrongs here. It's getting people okay saying out loud and stripping away those layers of ingrained beliefs and insecurities and that shame and the guilt factor of, I am creating my life, and what do I actually want my life to look like? Because, there's so much noise. There's so many loved ones, around us saying, oh, well, you should do this or don't do this, or why aren't you doing this? And especially the mom guilt. The mom guilt is alive and well, peeling back all those layers to say, actually, this is how I'm creating my life.
Hearing you talk about that, and it aligns with one of my core principles, which is the power of being intentional with your own self-leadership, to align and to identify and align your purpose so that you can create a vision. And it can be whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're working in an organization. I don't think that there's any big distinction of the extrinsic role, but the intrinsic alignment is so critical. And I have a fundamental belief that all leadership influence and impact for the most effective leaders starts with self-leadership. Like in order to lead and impact the lives of others, you must lead yourself first. Yeah. And then you can you earn the right to lead your teams to a higher level. Like you earn the right to lead to the orgs. And if you don't do that, you sub-optimize your impact. You are intentionally choosing it, whether it's an active choice or whether it's a passive choice. Like you're making this choice. What do you, when you think about this and the leaders that you work with, what are your thoughts on the importance of that prioritization and making sure that people make those choices so they can intentionally communicate, hey, this is a season. And I want to come back to the seasons in a minute because I have a thought of the share, but like how important is that and where do you start?
Some of the founders I work with have like been in the trenches for so long, like they have lost sight of the self-leadership component because all they can see in their day-to-day is the grind, the leading others, I have to be here on site every day, or I have to be doing this, or, also this usually not true, or the belief that, hey, this will all crumble without me, and making that transition or stepping away in any capacity often feels just totally not doable for them. Those who have been in the trenches for a while, we have to like circle back to that self-leadership piece, and really kind of reset in a way and get clarity on, okay, actually, what are you trying to grow here? Not only in your business, but in your relationships, in your home, in your personal life. And so that's one of the things as a psychologist, like the individuals I work with, we look very comprehensive whole life, because if you're only focused on growing a business, then your relationships are going to be hurting and, vice versa. And so we can't just narrow in on one area. It takes that pause to audit. And oftentimes we start with a calendar as our first place, because your calendar doesn't lie. Like, how are you spending your time? And are things on there out of just guilt, or you felt like you had to say yes? Like, do you even like what your calendar looks like? Because I also find too, the founders who have been in the trenches for a while, they really forget how much agency they do have. And so that's a starting point with the calendar audit of just saying, okay, what is your optimal? Like, what do you want to take out now? And so like, how do we work then to building that?
Oh, you've said some of my favorite words with it, there we talked about agency and you talk about, the intentional choices. I'm laughing internally because just today, and, this podcast will go live in a month or two, but just today I published to our current Leadership Accelerator, the module on the power of an intentional rhythm, where we talk about the ideal week, where we talk about not starting with what you are currently doing, but architecting and designing intentionally how you want to spend your time. And and there's a million ways to do this, and I don't necessarily have the right way figured out, but I like to think of life in 4 core domains: personal, professional, family, and then spiritual, community, social as the 4th domain, to keep it simple, because there's probably 9 or 12 or whatever. But we can make things really complicated if we're not careful. Yep. What is it that you find is the most common objection or limiting belief that very successful, high functioning, thoughtful, caring, considerate leaders buy into, that prevents them from, in the moment, breaking free from that the current state that they're in?
I definitely hear that I have to do it myself, because these are all high achievers. They've had some level of success. They're all very intelligent. They have a lot of skills. And so in order to break out of where they are, it's going to be delegating. Personal life, professional life, in the business, whatever that looks like. But there's a very hardcore belief of like, oh, if I am capable of doing this myself and I'm not doing this myself, then I'm not a hard worker. Or, in those who are raised like, just pull yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of thing. And once again, getting into all those just ingrained belief systems. But yeah, that belief that I have to do it all, because if I don't, that somehow says I am less than, or I'm not succeeding in the same way.
I'm going to go back to the seasons question, because I'm determined not to forget it. But then I'm going to circle back to this because I do think I'm curious on another thing. When I think of seasons, I had a mentor, his former senior pastor, share with me once that he was going through a really tough season, and it was a grind. It was a season. He's leading a mega church. He's felt like the weight of the world was on his shoulders, and he was under the tree with a journal and a Bible, reflecting. And he realized that what he had done is he had created his worth as a person wrapped up in the identity of the role. And he said it was like the clouds parted, and I realized that this was a season, but my season as the senior pastor of this church would end. But the other facets of my life, if I did them right, would still be there, and those seasons would be enduring. But if I didn't do them right, then by focusing all of my effort and energy into one facet during a very busy season, it wouldn't last. And so, it's okay to say it's a season. It's okay to say, there's this is a grind, and it's a grind for now. But it struck me so hard because I was in one of those seasons, and it was really profound wisdom of him telling me, hey, I'm not going to be the senior pastor here forever, and this will shift. And me then being able to internalize that and go, oh, I'm not going to be in this role, and it will shift. And what's going to be enduring, what's going to be important beyond that. And I don't know why it took so long for that wake-up call for me from a season's perspective. But it also made it okay to say, I'm in this season, and to do what I think you said, which is the most important thing, and communicate it. And I'll admit I still struggle with it every day.
Yeah, I love the insight your mentor got on that of just, what seasons are going to be long lasting, whatever that looks like, personal versus professional. I also think too, as a society, so this is a very global statement, but we aren't taught how to leave well. And so oftentimes we see endings, changing leadership positions or jobs, or even, I'd say we're becoming a much more transient population, so that moves are much more common, but we aren't taught how to leave relationships well either, be it friendships, be it mentors. And so oftentimes I feel like there's a general stigma of a loss or a negativity associated with that. Whereas someone who's like at their peak and just says, okay, I hit the mountaintop, and for whatever reason, X, Y, or Z, it's time to move on. Then we question that. And then we're like, well, why would you leave something good? I think especially with children, like just in moves and friendships and even school changes or leveling up in grades, like when we start reframing what leaving looks like and how leaving can be good, it helps us then better transition between those seasons and more kind of embrace them. And it's not something then to dread or that's seen as a negative.
I haven't thought about this in a long time, and I'm so glad you went there, because I think you're absolutely right. And I'm sitting here running through an inventory of, things I probably haven't done very well from an endings or end of season. We only value, global statement here, this is, it could be entirely wrong. We seem to value what we're doing or what we're going to do, but never being able to say, it's okay. This was a necessary ending, which is one of my favorite books from Dr. Henry Cloud.
I love that.
This was a necessary ending. And you just reminded me of that. Now I'm going, oh crap, now I need to go reread that one too. But it's okay. And we had a guest on the show a few months ago, and and his statement was, show me your closest advisors, mentors, and friends, and I'll show you your future. And in some endings are necessary, whether it's relationships, and they can be celebrated, and they're good, but we only seem to value what we're doing or what we're going to do. It's always like we have a discount ratio over past accomplishments. And I think that's really profound, and we need to celebrate those things.
Just because an ending is happening doesn't necessarily mean anything is wrong.
All right. So let me ask you this, and I'll admit this is a fully selfish question. Do you find yourself immune to all these tensions that you coach and advise others on?
Oh gosh, absolutely not. No. Honestly, you use the word tension. And so being now a seminary student, tension is like the magic word. I really believe that in all facets of life, without going too far down the theological rabbit hole of just like, if we're living in the already or not yet, or like that our actions here on earth have eternal consequences, like they have purpose, like there is always a tension of living in the state of a fallen world with all of the promises and the hope of what already is, but also what to come. And so that's absolute tension. And so I am also human. And yes, I've had to go down my own journey of just like accepting my humanness in a sense, because yeah, I am the type A, I am the perfectionist. I don't want to make mistakes. And so having those hard conversations or communicating clearly, I would say, yep, I've made a lot of strides. I'm getting better and better at them. It's a lifelong pursuit, but I'm still the one like, oh, my gut doesn't feel so great right now. You know, I have to go have this hard conversation, or this is really uncomfortable. And so I think really I found the difference then in people is just their willingness to be bold and to put it out there and to take the action and to talk about it. Because I'd say the general response is, yeah, you as humans, we're still like, oh, this is uncomfortable, or, oh, this doesn't just feel great here, but are you willing to take the bold action in spite of your discomfort? So yeah, I absolutely have all of that and feel that tension. So.
Oh, good. I feel a little better because I know that it's so interesting. Like when you coach and advise and serve others, sometimes you can't see those same blind spots for yourself. Like I still have a coach and I still have a mentor and I have peer networks that because I need someone else. And it may be the exact same advice that I would give someone else, but you just can't see it through your own, the blinders that we put on in the life that we put on. You know, it's interesting. I'm reminded of a conversation an old life group was having years ago. And we were talking about, and I don't know where it came from, what we were studying, but the metaphor of the long lens and the short lens, and how like we only one has ever been able to see through both lenses at the same time and really understand all of it. And we as human beings navigate between these two lenses, and we tend to live in the short view lens. I was having a conversation just this past week with my 13-year-old son about the power of meditation. And I told him, I said, look, I wish this is a habit I had developed at your age, and you won't understand it now. Yep. And he said, well, why is it important? I said, if I were to put it in a nutshell, and I'm not a master student of this, but if I were to put it in a nutshell, I have found it has been the installation of a circuit breaker that allows me to have just the ability, some of the time, not all the time, some of the time, to have the circuit trip before I respond, react, internalize something that I shouldn't. And, you know, that if I can figure out how to do that better, awesome. That's why I do the practice. Or the long view, short view lens switch gears, awesome. That's just part of it. But I'm glad to hear that you say that, you know, you still struggle with these, or you still have to deal with these tensions yourself.
Absolutely, I do. And I think anyone at any stage of life, no matter how seasoned you are, like you still need your team around you, be it accountability, a mentor, a coach, that confidant, like whatever that looks like, whatever you call that, because we're all still, you know, growing, learning, figuring this thing out.
Most leaders don't need more advice. They simply need clarity. That's what the Vision to Victory scorecard is all about. It's free, it's fast, and it gives you a clear picture of where you are and what's next. Start now at clarityalignmentexecution.com. Let's make sure that your next step forward is the right one. Well, on your journey, you've shared that you went into practice. What happened after that? Like, what are you doing now? How has this evolved? What is it you're doing today that you may not have even anticipated just 5-10 years ago?
So primarily being a testing psychologist, I was doing evaluations primarily in my practice. And then COVID hit and changed so many things for so many people. And out of that time, I was doing way more therapy than I ever wanted because, all the kids were at home doing school from home. Everyone, was behind a screen. And so out of that time, though, just by happenstance, I started working with a lot of executives, business owners. Some days I'd be like, was this therapy? Was this coaching? Because we were talking about like leading their teams through all the unknown, through all the stress, or they were going through reorgs in the office, but a divorce at home. I was like, wow, like I really love working with this population. And by that time had come to love and appreciate being a business owner and just how being a business owner and entrepreneur is about so much more than just like the financial income piece of it, because it really gives you that freedom, responsibility, privilege of shaping all areas of your life. And so I was like, man, I really love using my psych skills in this leadership business space. And so then following a sabbatical a couple years ago, I decided, all right, it's time to take a leap because I had got to that point. I was questioning, like, do I just keep doing this for another 20 or 30 years? Like, is this it? Because I was successful. The wheels were all turning well. Like, no one was going to question what I was doing or was I doing enough? And so I was like, okay, I'm ready for the next challenge. And so that's when I decided to shift my focus then into like more of the coaching consulting. So now I'm doing one-to-one coaching with owners, executives, but then also working with businesses as well, doing like workshops, trainings for their leadership teams, everything along those lines.
Amazing. I love how you've pivoted, turned, and evolved as you've grown in your journey. I have to ask, what is your purpose? What is your personal, internal, core purpose for your work?
To really help ambitious leaders think outside of the box and challenge the status quo. As a society, and I was in this spot too, like I had been very successful. I had checked all the boxes. I was, quote unquote, doing everything I was supposed to be doing. I was involved in my community. I was a homeowner, a business owner. I was volunteering my time, all the things. And I was just kind of like, okay, is this it? Have I arrived? Is this what I keep doing? And so really challenging those belief systems of that status quo, or just accepting, okay, this is it. This is what life is. And so really challenging people to think outside of the box. Probably one of the biggest compliments I got, I was actually in El Salvador working with a medical missions team. So I became a nomad about a year ago. So literally when I closed my practice, sold my house, put the rest of stuff in storage, and took off and said, we'll figure this out. So some people have commented, they're like, wow, you really did burn down the ship. So, or someone else said, oh man, that was like a total or midlife crisis or whatever. So however we categorize that.
No labels here.
Yeah. And so there was another medical professional and we were all in conversation and he was looking at a younger adult and he's like, okay, so like if you're thinking about like blowing up the ship and totally switching gears, becoming a nomad, like being an entrepreneur, don't talk to Lani about it because she'll convince you to do it. And I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I totally take that as a compliment because yeah, that is my goal. Because going back onto like the faith side of things, I think once again, broad statement, but as the American church, like we just put God in a box so quickly. And we get so limited on what our purposes are here, on understanding this limitless God and this God of abundance. And so really challenging these leaders who have position and influence and privilege of how are you going to use all that? Like there actually is so much richness in the here and now, in the midst of the fallen world that we are just missing out on because we get so stuck in just, do I look like the person next to me and have I checked the boxes?
Oh, that's so cool. Well, I have to ask, where in this great planet, this world are you right now?
I am presently in Park City, Utah.
It's not a bad spot to be. Amazing hiking out there.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So where has been the favorite place you've traveled to thus far?
Park City is probably up there because I spent last fall here as well. And so I'm back here for a few months. I'm not a skier, so I usually peace out then when the snow comes. I've also spent some time in Michigan, Nashville, Tennessee. Love the hustle and bustle of Nashville and just middle Tennessee. I don't plan that far in advance, so we'll see what's next after Park City.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and I cannot remember the name of it. Lake Effect, actually. They're one of my favorite little restaurants downtown Salt Lake City. Lake Effect has a great jazz club. It's an amazing spot. So I'm envious of those adventures. What are some of the personal practices that you use to maintain your own sense of calm and focus? I mentioned, I meditate, but like, what is a person like you who has skills, knowledge, training, and expertise? What are the things that you do that help you be a better human being, leader, servant, etc.?
So in this new nomad season, like relationships are always top priority for me, but they look really different now. And so there has been a figuring it out season. And so there's a lot more Marco Polo usage going on now too, or having to plan FaceTimes and different time zones and things like that too, making sure that stays a priority for me, even if it looks differently. And then in my day-to-day, once I get somewhere, I always got to get into a quick daily rhythm. And so that always includes some form of working out, some type of God time, getting my workflows, knowing how I work best, how I need my deep thinking time. Sleep is definitely a priority. And so just making sure, okay, I'm not negating any of these areas so I can show up as my best.
I like how you positioned all of those things as the things that you have agency over, the control you have over. So you're not letting the environment dictate to you what's going to happen. And there's going to be days, right? There's just days where you have to get up earlier, you have to catch a flight or do crazy things, but it's not about the pursuit of perfection, a perfect schedule. It's, hey, this is the routine that's going to optimize. And you know what works for you. It's trial and error, and you're probably going to tweak it again as life goes on. This has been an amazing conversation. I feel like I've got like dozens more questions I could ask. And so we'll definitely have to have you back because there's other areas I really like to double click into.
Absolutely,
Specifically for leadership and specifically for self-leadership, et cetera. But I'm going to leave that for a future episode if you're cool with it and shift gears to some rapid fire questions.
All right, let's do it. Rapid fire.
All right. What is one book that you believe every leader should read?
Usually my go-to answer is Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud.
I did not know that. So I'm taking bonus points for that one.
Also, gosh, what is the title of this? See, you threw me off now because you took mine. I think it's called Plucking Up. It's by Liz Forkin Bohannon. But anyway, she's an entrepreneur, and it just, once again, kind of goes back to that piece of challenging status quo, of getting people to think about a bigger purpose, a bigger mission, challenging some of these ingrained beliefs of what we think we're supposed to be or should be. And it's very different than a lot of the leadership books out there. And so, yeah, that's one of my go-tos. I refer a lot of people to as well.
Okay, cool. I haven't read that, so I'm adding it to my book list immediately. That's cool. And I love this challenge the status quo, and that's a topic I want to get into on a future conversation because I've always believed in this relentless discontent with the status quo, and that can be good and bad. It can be damaging too if not everybody else is running at that pace, but we'll save that one. What is the best advice, leadership advice, life advice? What's the best pearl of wisdom or advice you've ever received?
When I was considering doing a doctorate, and once again, going back to, man, I don't want to put all that time in. Like, that sounds like way too much. My mom said to me, regardless of what you do or don't do, time will always pass. And so when I get caught up on the time that it's going to take to accomplish a goal or the time it's going to take to do something, I always go back to, okay, well, time's going to pass regardless. So how do I want to spend that time then? What do I want to have to show at the end of that time?
That is such good advice because your mom's exactly right. It's going to pass either way. How are you going to make it count?
Yeah.
Amazing. What's a leadership practice or a growth practice, whatever lens you want to put it under, that you had to learn the hard way?
I think just staying curious, because when you aren't curious, then you think that your way is best, then you are less able to hear others. You're quicker to negate other ideas. And so, yeah, there's been multiple times throughout the decades that I've just totally missed the lens because I forgot to stay curious and I thought I knew what was best. And, there may have been hurt relationships I had to go back and repair, or at the minimum had to, work on my communication skills. So yeah, I just get reminded to stay curious.
Amazing. Yeah. It is so easy to get locked in, and no matter how much we want, we all buy into our own BS sometimes.
Yeah.
What is a leadership myth that you would like to debunk?
You have to do it all. Going back to that same line of thinking of those leaders who believe they have to do it all, or a good leader carries all the weight and does it all. Actually, yeah, when we get into characteristics of a good leader and how they delegate and how they empower and equip and pull others up with them, there's a total myth that you have to have all the answers and you have to be at the top doing it all.
Couldn't agree more. What's your leadership superpower?
I think staying simultaneously structured yet flexible. There are those core beliefs or core needs, or just how, in this nomad season, I'm finding my rhythms to the day of those uncompromising things to be at my best. But also on the other hand, in the flip side of the coin, so to speak, I have to be flexible, and there's a lot of unexpected that comes up too. And so it's knowing when to give and knowing when to stand firm.
That's a heck of a superpower to have. All right. And then last one, how do you personally measure and define success at the end of the day? Said differently, at the end of the day, what can you look back on and go and give you the insight and the information to say, today was a good day?
I have a very clear 2035 vision. And so that is broken down into my Q1, Q2 goals, things like that. So I always know what I'm working on, what I'm operating on. I'd say at the end of the day, it's been a successful day when I've blocked out the noise. I've cut out the distractions. I've stayed focused on what I already had clarity on. But yet at the same time, back to the flexibility, if there was a relationship or something that came up along the way and that was more important in the moment, then, hey, I attended to that. And so, yeah, I don't want someone to think it's all about, just getting the checklist done, but it's, did I stick to what is my plan? What is my purpose? What are my goals?
I'm reminded of the famous Bruce Lee quote, be like water, my friends, and being able to navigate around to achieve the goal. And like you, I believe firmly in having that 10-year vision and then deconstructing it so that you can do the most important things, because it's really deciding in advance what you're going to say no to that's most important.
That is huge. Yes.
Yeah, it's certainly something we cover in our leadership acceleration. And it amazes me because, frankly, some of these things are hard-won lessons. I had to build protection systems for myself over the years.
Me too. Yeah, for sure.
All right. I said it was the last one, but I do have one more. What's a purpose or a cause that you are very passionate about supporting? A charity, an event, or tell me something about that.
Love the question. So for me, it's International Justice Mission, IJM. So they are an international organization committed to protecting women and children from violence, sexual abuse, not just women and children, but also even pulling people out of the sex trade. And so they are very focused, very purposeful in the countries they're working in across the world, of working with not only the judicial system, but also law enforcement, as well as aftercare services, then to varying degrees.
That's amazing. We will put a link in the show notes for that. And if anyone's interested in learning more, then I'd highly encourage them to check that out. That sounds like an organization that has real meaning all over it. Like that's real important work.
Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, that's super cool. Lani, where can our audience connect with you or learn more about you? What would be the best way for them to connect, learn, or discover more about you?
They can head to drlanijones.com. There, if they want to set up a complimentary advising session with me, get to know me, what would it be like to work with me? Or if they're like, I'm ready to dive in on my own too, I also have the final 1%, the starter kit of if they need some purpose, some clarity, where do I go next? That's also available on my website.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the time today. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your knowledge that you're just graciously giving to me and to our audience. I've loved this conversation. Definitely want to have you back. And there's so many places we could go. We definitely have some strong alignment in beliefs, and I'd love to pick your brain and help others gain from your wisdom and insights.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for all your openness and curiosity and the great conversation.
Awesome. Lani, thank you. We'll talk soon. If today's episode gave you something to think about, something to apply, then there's more where that came from. Head over to arcusgroup.com and sign up for our newsletter. It's where we share tools, insights, and our leadership frameworks to help you lead with more clarity, more alignment, and more impact. No fluff, just what helps you lead better. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time on Leadership Unlocked.